Hey students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is Johnson's Great Society, and here are your objectives. Please pause the video, look these questions over, and get ready to copy some vocab terms and take some notes. We're going to start this video by reviewing something that you learned earlier in the year, and that's the difference between fiscal conservatives and economic liberals. Fiscal conservatives are people who think that the government should collect few taxes and spend little money. As a result, fiscal conservatives do not support the government spending money on social programs like ones that address poverty. Herbert Hoover was a fiscal conservative. During the Great Depression, he opposed the government spending money to help Americans in need. On the other hand, economic liberals are people who think that the government should play an active role in fixing problems and should spend money to help people in need. Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, was an economic liberal. His New Deal was a whole bunch of social programs that were paid for by the government. So during the 1960s, social justice movements brought attention to social problems in America, and they led to calls for the federal government to once again spend money to address inequalities, just as it had done during the New Deal earlier. And these calls were answered by Lyndon Baines Johnson, the U.S. president between 1963 and 1969. Johnson is often called LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. And like FDR before him, LBJ was an economic liberal who believed that the government should take action to address inequality. Johnson's series of social programs was called the Great Society. The Great Society is like the New Deal of the 1960s. An important difference is that the Great Society, pushed by the Civil Rights Movement, also addressed problems of racial injustice. Let's look at some specific Great Society programs. The first two programs are called Medicare and Medicaid, and they guaranteed health insurance to the poor and to the elderly. Before the 1960s, these two groups often lacked health care, creating higher rates of illness and shorter lifespans. Both Medicare and Medicaid still exist today. The next program is called Job Corps, and it provided government jobs to the poor and to minorities. Job Corps was similar to New Deal programs like the Works Progress Administration. The third program is called Head Start, and it provided education and health services for very young children between the ages of 0 and 5. And the last program is called the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This was actually a law, not a program, but it had far-reaching consequences. The Voting Rights Act banned all discriminatory voting practices that kept non-white people from voting in the Jim Crow South. You learned about those practices earlier in the year. They included things like the poll tax, the literacy test, and the grandfather clause. All of these discriminatory practices were declared illegal in every state by the Voting Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act is considered to be the end of the Jim Crow era. All right, now it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know the answer to any of them, just rewind the video and look again. And I will see you in class. Bye, students.